right, so welcome to the 12-Step Big Book Workshop. My name is Lisa, and I am a student of the 12 Steps Method of Recovery. My focus fellowships are CODA, Al-Anon, and OA, and I'm really glad you guys are here tonight. We're really making headway, and I hope you feel like you're also making headway on your own, but we are all making great progress. So please join me while muted in the set-aside prayer with the willingness to have an open mind and an open heart and the gift of release as we tackle our 4th steps. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my step 4, and my resentments, so that I may have a new experience in my life with my unmanageability and especially with you. So we're still on step 4. Step 4 is one of the longer steps that we're going to tackle. And it involves a much lengthier amount of time because there's a lot to it. And there's a lot of confusion, which I'm hoping to make sure I clear up for all you guys, because the clearer you are, the clearer your answers are going to be, and the quicker your recovery is going to take hold. So please do not hesitate to ask any questions, even if they seem silly or like they were answered. I really want everyone to be nice and clear. So step 4 is very important because it involves creating a thorough and fearless personal inventory, which is the first concrete action of the 12-step program. And it's a crucial step in understanding the root causes of our addictions. The 4th step, self-examination, helps individuals move past blaming others, identifying our harmful patterns like resentment and fear, and gain self-awareness so that we can begin to change. This step is considered the foundation for all future steps of recovery by providing the honest self-assessment required to build a new way of living. So we're looking deeply at resentments, and we will look specifically into the first component that Bill has us deal with, which in the resentments. And then we'll go on to the fear, and then finally the sexual behaviors. These are the 3 categories Bill uses in the Big Book. We look at these 3 as they are the source that creates the tensions in our lives and ourselves that deliver us back to our addictive habit for reducing tension and soothing us from ourselves through our addictions. So that's the key component to why the resentment work is so important. If we don't eliminate the resentments, we're going to continue to relapse. Resentment is a fatal poison, according to Bill. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. For an addict, harboring these feelings is a spiritual sickness that blocks access to a higher power. It is fatal, and it leads to relapse. Resentment itself is an act of refeeling. The word resentment is described as resentiment, meaning to feel it again, the pain of whatever it was, and feeling it over and over again. And by repeatedly replaying these grievances, real or imagined, an addict becomes mentally and emotionally trapped by past events. By holding on to these resentments, the addict shuts himself off from the sunlight of the spirit. Bill says, without this spiritual connection, the insanity of addiction returns and we use all over again. Resentment is a self-inflicted poison, much like the saying, drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. I'm sure you guys have heard that expression. The Big Book suggests that resentment only poisons the person holding the grudge. The people who are resented are often unaware or unaffected, while the addict is consumed by their bitterness, which is the most unfortunate part. We think we're going to get mad and they're going to feel it, and they never even know. All of the steps help us deal with fear, even when we aren't sure what that fear is. Step 4 is essential to understanding our fears. We are required to make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, and fear plays a significant role in this process. We're reluctant to admit fear because it's a powerful and often hidden emotion. The Big Book emphasizes that fear is a corrosive thread running through many aspects of an addict's life, leading to self-destructive behaviors, strained relationships, and the perpetual cycle of addiction. The fourth step encourages us to confront and understand our fears rather than avoid them. This confrontation is essential for breaking the cycle of addiction and building a foundation for long-term recovery. When Bill discussed, quote unquote, inappropriate sex, he was referring to his own history of adultery and promiscuity, which occurred both during and after his early sobriety. He didn't offer a formal published definition of the term. However, the context of his life and the experiences of others in AA suggests that inappropriate sex referred to behaviors that endangered his relationships, his sobriety, and the well-being of others. Heavy alcohol consumption can significantly impact sexual behavior and lead to or exacerbate hypersexuality. For those struggling with addiction, this connection is complex and problematic because it reinforces addictive patterns and leads to a cycle of alcohol abuse and risky sexual behavior. Not to mention what it does to the alcoholic or addict who recovers and then has to deal with the sexual behaviors they've encountered. So in asking for guidance, we look at the sexuality with the four principles of honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love. So Bill W. viewed human instincts as God-given and necessary for survival, but also recognized they are the source of most human troubles when they go astray or are misused. Bill believed that for alcoholics, particularly these misdirected instincts, become powerful, distorted drives that lead to self-destructive behavior. In the 12 and 12, Bill wrote that creation gave us instincts for a purpose. He identifies three core human instincts. The first one is sex, which obviously we needed for reproduction. The second one is security, which encompasses needs for material and emotional stability. And the third is society, the need for companionship and the desire to belong. However, Bill observed that these instincts often far exceeded their proper functions and can turn into mental and physical liabilities. When this happens, a person can become a battleground for the instincts, leading to unhappiness and a life governed by excessive, unhealthy desires. For addicts, Bill believed that their primary struggle was with misdirected instincts. Where most people's basic instincts were survival, an alcoholic's obsessive drinking defies their natural instincts for self-preservation. An alcoholic's instincts are in collision and cause damage to themselves and others. Rather than being healthy drives, the alcoholic's instincts manifest as an overblown ego, full of pride and greed, and drive them to demand that others meet their unreasonable needs. It is the disease of more. Bill viewed anger not as a separate phenomenon, but as an expression of human instincts that have run amok. While he acknowledged that normal people might afford themselves the dubious luxury of occasional justified anger, for alcoholics, it was a poison that inevitably led to relapse. He connected unbridled instincts and the resulting anger to selfishness, which he identified as the core problem for alcoholics. As far as fear is concerned, Bill viewed human instincts as necessary for survival, but also believed they became distorted, leading to excessive behavior in fear. In his writings, such as in the 12 and 12, he identifies three instincts: social, sexual, and security, and explains how an unbalanced pursuit of these can lead to spiritual illness. He believed that fear is the result of these instincts gone awry and the root cause of many other character defects. According to Bill, fear is not a problem in itself, but a symptom of a deeper spiritual ailment caused by our instincts on rampage. When a person's instinctual drives collide with others or with rational morality, it produces unhappiness and fear, such as fear of losing security, an unreasonable fear that one's financial or material needs will not be met, which can lead to greed, envy, and sloth. Bill explained that the unreasonable fear that our instincts will not be satisfied drives us to covet the possessions of others and then seek power or sex to an excessive degree. Making excessive demands for attention and love from others can lead to unhealthy relationships and the fear of abandonment. Bill promoted rigorous honesty as a core principle for recovery, which required facing the truth about one's selfish and dishonest actions. Through the fourth steps inventory, the program's instructions to make a searching and fearless moral inventory directly addresses this by forcing a clear-eyed look at the manifestation of one's selfishness, dishonesty, and delusions. Bill saw the solution as a spiritual one. By turning one's will over to a higher power, an alcoholic could be relieved of the bondage of self, which was the root cause of their corrupted instincts. As recovery progresses, honesty is meant to become a daily practice, moving from the difficult initial admissions to a constant consciousness state of mind. Bill's views on honesty are complicated by his personal history. Despite his program's emphasis on honesty, biographers have noted that he had affairs and was unfaithful to his wife. This reflects his belief that the journey toward honesty is an ongoing process for everyone, including Bill himself. In Bill's view, unchecked instincts directly cause resentments because they are rooted in selfishness and expectations for how others should behave. He saw resentments as the number one offender for alcoholics, acting as a spiritual disease that blocks them from a higher power and can lead to relapse. In the Big Book, Bill identifies several core instincts that, when they become unregulated, demands fuel resentment. Resentment often arises when these instincts are threatened, such as, on the list, security or the pocketbook. We become resentful when our financial security or ambitions are threatened. For example, being angry that a computer breaks is a resentment tied to our financial instinct. Social and personal relations, or ambition on our sheets, our social standing and personal relationships, including sex, can become a source of resentment. When our desires for attention or prestige are uncontrolled, it can damage relationships and cause conflict. When the sexual instinct is excessively demanding, it can lead to hurt feelings and resentment. The fourth step focuses on a searching and fearless moral inventory to uncover the link between instincts and resentments. This process reveals that our resentments are not primarily about what others have done to us. Instead, the inventory shows that in almost every case, our own selfishness and self-centered demands for the satisfaction of our instincts are the underlying cause of our anger. Bill's view on how to address this issue emphasizes taking responsibility for one's own role in the resentment. The solution is not to demand that others change, but to change one's own defective responses. By seeing that our resentments are a result of our own warped instincts, we can begin to let them go. Writing down the resentment, identifying which of our instincts were threatened, and asking for guidance from a higher power to let go of the resentments are the methodology to eliminating those resentments. Then we pray for the person who is the object of our resentment. As this process shifts, the focus from blaming others to recognizing one's own contribution and ultimately leads to a greater spiritual and emotional freedom. This part of the fourth step really throws people for a loop when we do the sheets and we come to the realization that we're the cause of our own distress. And we'll discuss it later, but do keep that in mind that that's where we're headed. The connection between fear and resentment, according to Bill, is described in the following ways. Fear drives character defects. The 12 and 12 states the chief activator of the defects has been self-centered fear. This fear causes people to demand certain things from life: security, prestige, relationships. And when these demands are threatened, anger and resentment arise. When doing a fourth step inventory, individuals will find that their resentment stems from a threat to something they hold dear. This can include their own self-esteem, ambitions, personal relationships, or security, all of which are rooted in fear. Bill calls fear an evil, corroding thread that runs through the fabric of people's lives. This fear invariably powers anger, vainglory, and aggression, with resentment being one of its primary expressions. Bill viewed shame as a major component of the spiritual malady that drives alcoholism and believed it feeds directly into the resentment that ultimately leads to relapse. Though shame is not explicitly detailed in the Big Book as a root cause in the way resentment is, it is understood through his writings to be an underlying driver of the self-centeredness that fuels resentment. Shame leads to pride and ego. Bill identified selfishness, self-centeredness as the root of the alcoholic's troubles. Shame manifests as feelings of inadequacy, unworthiness, and failure. The alcoholic's response is often an overcorrection in the form of pride or a self-will run riot who tries to prove their worth. This inflated ego is easily wounded, leading directly to resentments. A core theme in the 12-step program is ending the isolation that accompanies addiction. The painful feelings of shame cause addicts to withdraw and hide their true selves and past actions from others. This isolation prevents meaningful connection and reinforces the self-centered, distorted thinking that gives rise to the resentments. Instead of accepting responsibility for their actions, shame-based thinking often leads to self-pity, which Bill called a bar to all spiritual progress. The addict projects their inner turmoil outward, blaming other people or institutions or principles for their problems. This, according to Bill, is the foundation of resentment. In Bill's perspective, links the false self or the ego self with the profound and destructive nature of resentment. He described resentment as the number one offender for addicts, a spiritual disease that stems directly from selfishness and the demands of the ego. The false self is rooted in the self-will run riot, the core of the addict's problems. This false self is an exaggerated, demanding version of who we believe we should be, driven by a desperate search for security, approval, and control. When the world inevitably fails to meet the impossible standards of this false self, it produces frustration and pain. Bill says that as long as people are victimized by false dependencies on others for their emotional satisfaction, they will inevitably feel resentful. He also recognized that the adolescent urges for perfect security and approval create unrealistic expectations that no one can possibly satisfy, leading to disappointment and anger when they are not met. Resentment arises when the false self's key interests are threatened, including self-esteem, relationships, ambitions, and finances. When these demands are not met, the ego feels victimized and holds a grudge. So, speaking of the false self, we got to remember the cartoon with Lost Lisa being in chains and bondage of her own suffering. If you look close, you'll see that her chains of bondage are not connected to anything in reality. She remains in bondage because she is the one holding those chains. She is a victim of her own delusions. She is chained to her own fears for as long as she holds on to the chains. It is illusional and delusional. Yes, this is true, but it is not factual, but it is true to her. And so we do the step 4 to identify those chains that we've wrapped around ourselves that have taken away our peace and freedom for many decades of our lives. So we all have a biology that creates our genetics. This is my story and my family culture, and it has determined my survival instincts. So that's our grandparents. It started probably somewhere there, whoever, raised our parents, and then our parents raised us, and so it goes. And the mask and the persona we developed in our families and culture, whatever that means for each of us, but whatever it means, that the culture is there. I grew up in a family dynamic that I couldn't escape, and my family culture determined my reactions to my life. Without awareness of this dynamic, I am doomed to live dysfunctionality. But also my emotions and the experiences I have had because of my family's dynamics and my predetermined genetics. It determined a whole bunch of the components of the false self, the fake masks we wear to try to cope with the world from a disadvantaged, warped sense of self. My education and my psychology and emotional reactions, the information that I got from the people around me, the schools I attended, people in the classrooms with me, my neighborhood that I lived in, the people who were my social group. These all had played part in what I became and who I am today, for good or bad. They are the compilation that makes me behave the way I do and see the world from the glasses that I wear. The true self has been covered up layer after layer after layer so that we don't even know who we are, or who we are is unrecognizable compared to the potential we have missed out on. The whole point of step 4 is to look at and break up with those layers of our false selves so that we can, in fact, finally see who we actually are. And in order to do that, we have to let go of the biology and the genetics and the family and the culture and the emotion and the experiences and maybe even our education, because we don't know how it's clouded us or how we've allowed it to cloud us by our interpretations. So in the big book, Bill asks us to identify and analyze our self-centeredness. He says on page 62, selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of our problem. So then selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our suffering. And the fruit of that tree is our survival instinct to fight, which is translated into resentments. Or our fears, which directs us to run and hide to protect ourselves from harm. Or to cover our inadequacies in inappropriate sexual behaviors. Sexual behaviors can be a major obstacle to power and recovery from addiction by creating cycles of shame, eroding healthy relationships, serving as a substitute addiction, and being used as a coping mechanism for trauma. This is particularly true when sexual activity is compulsive, risky, or disconnected from genuine intimacy. These are the 3 components of the step 4 inventory, and we need to add one more. We need to include guilt. which is not in the big book in the same way that we use them in our culture today. But guilt acts as an obstacle to power and recovery from addiction by trapping individuals in a cycle of self-punishment and powerlessness. While guilt is a feeling of remorse for a specific action, it can easily devolve into pervasive shame, which is the belief that one is inherently a bad person. This cycle undermines a person's sense of self-worth, agency, and belief that they deserve a better life. Guilt is really quite a killer. Then we have dishonesty and secrets. They're fundamental obstacles to power and recovery from addiction, as they directly enable denial, prevent self-awareness, and destroy the trust necessary for a strong support network. The very nature of addiction involves a deceptive cycle of justifying harmful behaviors to others and to oneself, which keeps the individual trapped in powerlessness. Addiction thrives on denial, and secrets are used to conceal the extent of substance abuse from others and the addicts themselves. The first step in recovery is admitting powerlessness over addiction, which is impossible without confronting the full truth of the problem. Shame. Shame acts as an obstacle to recovery from addiction by fostering a negative self-identity, promoting isolation, and sabotaging motivation, which strips individuals of their sense of power and perpetuates a vicious cycle of addiction. Unlike guilt, which focuses on a specific action, I did something bad, shame is a deeply personal belief that I am bad. That undermines a person's core sense of self. The intense fear of judgment that comes with shame is one of the primary reasons people with addiction do not seek help. Even after an individual has entered recovery, unaddressed shame remains a significant threat. To reclaim their power, individuals in recovery must move from a place of shame and internal worthlessness towards self-compassion and acceptance. So, an unchanging mindset keeps an individual trapped in denial, which is a key feature of addiction. Change your thoughts and you change your world means that your mindset and the way you think directly influence your experiences, emotions, actions, and ultimately the reality you create for yourself. By consciously shifting from negative to positive thought patterns and cultivating optimism and gratitude, you can transform your perspective, unlock new possibilities, and positively alter your life circumstances. Your thoughts are the foundation of your perceptions and actions. Negative thoughts can lead to limiting beliefs, while positive thoughts foster opportunities and a greater capacity for success. By being aware of your thoughts and actively choosing to think differently, you can change how you react to external circumstances and make better choices. And a change in thoughts can lead to shifts in your emotions and behaviors. For example, a grateful mindset can lead to more positive interactions, while a mindset of scarcity might lead to behaviors that reinforce the lack. When you change your thinking, you open yourself up to new ideas and possibilities that you may not have seen before. This can lead to positive developments in your career, relationships, and overall well-being. Bill describes step 4 as making a searching and fearless moral inventory of oneself to discover the underlying flaws that have caused failure and a blocked connection to a higher power. He likens this to a business taking stock to get rid of damaged or unsellable goods without self-deception. The process involves honestly examining one's own fears, resentments, and character defects to understand the root of one's problem. The primary purpose is to identify defects of character that have led to failure using the concept of a commercial inventory as a metaphor. The inventory must be done without fear and with a thorough, honest search of oneself to avoid fooling oneself about values or simply focusing on the obvious. A key goal is to clear blockages caused by resentment and fear, which prevent a person from connecting to their higher power. So the inventory process helps expose the false self by revealing specific character defects rooted in the ego. The false self is fundamentally dishonest. The addict has often buried these self-same defects deep down in us under thick layers of self-justification. Step 4 forces a person to look at themselves squarely in the eye and stop fooling themselves with a phony list. A key element of the Step 4 inventory involves listing resentments and asking why a person is angry. In many cases, the inventory reveals that anger is due to a threatened ego when one's self-esteem, security, or ambitions were interfered with. The addict sees their own faults in others through projection. The inventory shifts the focus from blaming others to looking at one's own part in the situation. Bill identifies fear as a core manifestation of the false self. The Big Book suggests that fear is what often keeps the alcoholic from growing, preferring to suffer in predictable ways rather than take a chance on something new. During the inventory, fears are examined, not to apologize for them, but to ask a higher power to remove them and provide courage. The false self drives the addict to be self-seeking, always trying to struggle to the top of the heap or to hide underneath it, rather than relating to others as equals. This behavior blocks true connection and leads to isolation. Still on page 64, Bill says, our liquor or our addictive substance is but a symptom. We have been echoing this in our workshop. Yes, addiction is a problem, but it is not the problem. Bill just said it right there. Liquor is but a symptom of the problem. So we have to get down to the causes and conditions. This is Bill's invitation to step forward. Bill gives us all of the instructions to analyze and get down to the causes and conditions. This is why the slide on instincts, reactions, and emotions was so important, because it gets underneath the underneath to the underneath to the basic biology. Because at the end of the day, we are all still human. So Bill says our troubles are of our own making because the root of our problems is selfishness and a self-centeredness that is driven by fear and delusion. This self-will run riot leads people to act in ways that cause harm to themselves and others. And when those negative consequences arise, the individuals are in a position to be hurt, often without realizing the connection to their own past decisions. According to Bill, the spiritual part of our disease is our total self-centeredness, which leads to a belief that the world revolves around our own wishes and demands. This self-centeredness is often driven by 100 forms of fear, such as the fear of loss or failure, which fuse self-seeking behaviors and self-pity. To manage these fears, we engage in behaviors that step on the toes of our fellows, and when others retaliate or circumstances change, they are hurt by the consequences of their own poor choices. Then our fear of rejection might lead us to be dishonest by withholding feelings which can damage our relationships. Our self-will run riot puts us in a position to be hurt and cause harm to other important people. The solution is to change, and this realization is a key part of recovery. The solution is to identify these self-centered patterns by doing a step 4 inventory of them, and then letting go of self-will by relying on a higher power. You guys are probably tired of hearing about self-centeredness and selfishness. There's a lot of it here. Bill promises us that when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. What really is this spiritual malady, and how, if left untreated, can it drive an addict back to using? What is the remedy for it? What is this spiritual malady we suffer from, and how can untreated addiction cause an addict to return to using even when he does not want to? So imagine 3 layers. The first layer is our bodily reaction to addictive substances and process addiction. When we use the physical craving of the brain. Under that is the second layer, the insanity of the mind just before the first drink, the mental obsession, the hijacking. Under that is the third layer, the inward condition that triggers the second layer, which in turn triggers the first layer, the spiritual malady. Symptoms of this third layer, as described in the Big Book, are being restless, irritable, and discontented, troubled with personal relationships, not being able to control our emotional natures, being a prey to or suffering from misery and depression, not being able to make a living or a happy and successful life, having feelings of uselessness, being full of fear, unhappiness, inability to be of real help to others. These are all on page 52. Being like the actor who wants to run the whole show, or being driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. Self-will run riot is right up there, which leads to a double life, like a tornado running through the lives of others and exhibiting selfish and inconsiderate habits. These name just a few of the symptoms of the spiritual malady that's described throughout our text. But still in all, these are just symptoms of the spiritual malady. So what is it really? What is the driving force of the symptoms described on the previous slide? On page 62, the text explains that selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. If this selfishness, self-centeredness continues to manifest in an addict's life, even in someone who is not drinking and is attending meetings, and the ego is not smashed and re-smashed by continuous application of all 12 steps, the sober or just not drinking alcoholic/addict is sure to use again eventually, or even worse, continue to live miserably being undrunk, also better known as a dry drunk. If I continue to act out with selfish, self-centered, ego-driven behaviors, I will continue to experience the symptoms of the spiritual malady. If I continue to experience this inward unmanageability, eventually my mind will seek out the sense of ease and comfort it thinks it can receive from taking that first drink or using. Or my ego will deceive me into thinking I'm doing perfectly fine. Such as Fred's story in chapter 3, where Fred drank when there wasn't a cloud on the horizon. So ask yourself, if you're suffering from the spiritual malady, what condition is your inner life in currently? Are you experiencing any of the symptoms listed on the previous slide? Page 62 says, above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness, the ego. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of the ego self without God's help. So we live in a flow behind a spiritual shield that protects us from the obsession that will take us back to a relapse when dealing with our resentments. So Bill is going to make it very clear in each component of the Step 4 inventory, the resentment, the fear, the sexual behaviors, that writing about the events in order to recognize your resentments. This is not about a memory of a resentment, and it's not about looking back at a prior inventory to see what's on your list. The point is for you to search your soul to honestly find your sources of resentment and anger. And it is worth saying again, just a reminder, we're looking for the shark bites, the ones that give you big pain or big pause, not the small mosquito bites that we all encounter on a daily basis. Although they are annoying, they aren't the problem. We all have our own tolerance levels. My shark bite may not seem like much to the next guy, but to me, it is huge. So try to keep that in mind when you're making your list and you're getting up over 10 or 20 people. Let's go back and look at them and make sure they're shark bites and not mosquito bites. You will realize as you do the sheets that eventually you can replace any name or circumstance in the dynamic, and it's all the same because the central actor in every play is you. This is part of our self-centeredness. We put ourselves in the middle of everything and then wonder why we are angry at the world until we realize we are angry at ourselves. This may sound disappointing. You really wanted to blame your person, but the reality is, if it were outside yourself, you would have no control. At least when it is ourselves, we have options to address it and eliminate it. We are only capable of changing ourselves, no one else, and also no one can change us, but ourselves with the support of a higher power and the 12 steps. So back to lost Lisa, and she's in her chains, bondage of suffering. She remains chained to her own fears for as long as she holds on to the false self that she has been identifying as. She is delusional, yes, but this information is not factual, but it is real for her, which until it isn't, which is why we do a 4-step to identify those proverbial chains, those delusional thoughts that we have wrapped around ourselves like armor, that perhaps we're needed for survival or protection, but once that ends, we don't understand their presence or how to stop the destruction they've now created. So I am going to ask you all to do a little side project for next week, and I'm going to have you create either a drawing, a sketch, whatever medium you prefer. And I want you to make your own little one-page picture version of your lost Lisa or your pathetic Herbie caricature. And I want you to put as much detail in that you can, whatever it takes to express your feelings of how you have felt about your life going into recovery and how you have had a false self and what that false self has looked like.
Could you say that again?
Go ahead, Joel.
I'm sorry, could you say that again from the beginning? You want us to do
Yes. So
what?
what I want you to do, I want you to take how I've done my lost Lisa picture, and I want you to make your own based on your own pain, your own life, what you've been carrying around as your false self. And you don't have to be an artist. You can go on the computer and use some PowerPoint or whatever program you want, or you can sketch it with a pencil, pen. But I want you to think about your false self and what that would look like to you if you had to draw it. Like I picked this picture and I feel like I was in chains. What did your addiction feel like to you? And I want you to describe it in picture form. And you can use a few words like I did, but try not to. Try to have your picture tell the story and describe your situation as well as you can. And like I said, don't worry about your ability as an artist. This isn't about art. This is about a release. I want you guys to release your big egos there. So if you don't have time to do it, even if you can at least do something real quick, like, I've always felt like I'm in a cage, or I think you guys have all heard that Peter Pumpkin Eater had a wife and couldn't keep her, kept in a pumpkin shell. So anything that resonates with you that can describe how you feel your false self has run rampant in your life. And we're just going to put it to paper, crayons, markers, pens, pencils, whatever you want. You guys decide. If it's way over the top, that's even better, because the more you put into this little drawing, the more you're going to understand about yourself. So I'm going to go over um, the grudge list and the few sheets that you guys have been sent home. While it's still up here, I want to see if anyone has any questions about how to do the sheets, or questions about what, I don't know, what it might be about the actual sheet, or how to go about doing it if you're struggling with it. The first one is the grudge list, which is not actually in the book. I got it from somewhere else. But the grudge list is pretty self-explanatory. You're just using it to fill in your 10 or 20 people, to give you, like, it's like you're at ground zero, and this is where you're starting, and you're going to write out the names of the people that are causing you some resentment. And they don't have to be alive. They don't have to be in your life anymore. They just have to be people who, when you think about them, your blood boils. You have not let go of how you feel about these people. It could be an ex, it could be a parent, it could even be a child. Some people feel that way about children, their own children. And, don't hold back. Write down your honest feelings, even if it seems unreasonable at the time. In this particular situation, more is better. More information as far as what you're feeling. And the goal is to be thorough. We want to be thorough. We want this. If you were selling a house and the realtor says it's got to be broom clean, that's how we want to do our inventory. We want to be broom clean. There's nothing left to pick up. We're going to hit it. We're going to tick all the boxes. So does anyone have any questions about the grudge list? Okay.
Lisa, there's a question in the chat about where to get the sheets from last week.
If you didn't get them with the email that went out, then I can resend them to whoever is asking. So if you didn't get the sheets, send me an email and I'll resend the sheets to you.
Okay, I didn't realize it was in the lot. It was in the email from last week.
Yeah, not this week, but not the one that just went out today, the following one.
Like prior.
Yeah. So when the Zoom code came out, I think it was with the Zoom code came out last Tuesday.
Yep.
Sheets would be in there with it.
Oh, okay. So that's fine.
If not, send me an email. I can just send them right back out to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, because I was expecting blanks, not of this sheet. I got this sheet, but the other ones that I didn't know. Are we supposed to start working on those other sheets that you had filled in with blue?
Yes.
Okay.
So last week, Annette, I wanted you to just do the grudge sheet.
Okay.
This week, when I send out the homework, I'm going to send out the blank sheets so that you can actually go ahead and fill them in, and keep the ones that are filled in with the blue as an example in case you get stuck.
All right, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think it'll help as you're reading through it. It keeps you going back to the right place.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa.
No problem. So these are your resentments. These are the people. You can put the cause, why I'm angry. And again, we're not writing books. We're just doing sheets. We want it to be succinct, accurate. It only takes a couple words. It doesn't have to be, 6-page story. Try to stay on the sheet.
A separate one for each one of them.
Yes. So each person that you're going to do a resentment on, and you might have people, like sometimes parents, we run into more than one resentment. So we'd have to have multiple pages for each parent if that's the case. Or some of us have multiple exes that we often have resentments towards. And I'm encouraging you not to go off of the sheets, because then when you do, you're getting into the story and you're not in the issue. You're off writing a book. So we really want to be very pinpointed on what's going on with the resentment. The second part, this was also the grudge list. This is just the cause. You guys, if you haven't done it, put the cause down and see it. It's pretty short. 3 little sentences, nothing big. Some of these aren't even full sentences, just words to describe and help you continue on with it. And then the third column is how's it affected you. You're going to identify how the situation has affected you emotionally, spiritually. It could be your self-esteem. It could be your security, your ambitions, your personal relations, and your sexual relations. And then this one here, so this is the actual third column, which you guys are going to do this week on your own. And I don't know if you need me to run through it again, but so you're going to start with the person that you're resenting is number 1. That's the first column, which we got from the grudge list. Number 2 is the reason, which we also get from the grudge list. And then number 3 is where this actual sheet comes in. How did this hurt, threaten, or interfere with my number 1, self-esteem? So when we look at this, we want to look at our self-esteem and say, okay, how did this person affect my self-esteem? Because I am, and we describe ourselves as the most wonderful person on the planet that could not possibly have done whatever this person might have thought. So we're going to really build up that I am about myself. It's a very positive statement. Don't put any negative stuff in there about yourselves. It's definitely 100% positive when you talk about who you are. And then we're going to kick it off with what my fear is, which is often the opposite of what my self-esteem is. So mine says, I am an open and honest, kind, accepting wife. So then my fear could be, well, I'm afraid I'm not as honest, kind, and accepting as I thought I was. That's an exact opposite. It doesn't have to be opposite, but if you're really struggling, you can run the opposite effect by yourself and see if that's what resonates with you, if that's what makes sense. That makes sense? See if that makes sense, if that makes sense. And then
Yes, that makes sense.
It does make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then of course we go down the column. Number 2, my pride. And then again, this is how do I want people watching to see me being treated? And some people have said, use a stage. You're up on a stage, and this whole audience is seeing this person that I resent treating me. What way do I want to be treated? If a stage doesn't work, I've also used, you're at a wedding, you're sitting at the head table, and you want everyone to see you being treated a certain way by your ex. Or maybe, Joel, you might like this one. Maybe you're in a courtroom in front of a judge and you want to be seen as, oh my God, I am the perfect wife. He had no reason to treat me the way he does. So it's kind of like that. You are on stage or on the front of something. You want everyone seeing yourself being treated properly by this person that you resent for not treating you properly. So wherever you have to put yourself, where you're in front of a bunch of people that are at least important to you, put yourself wherever you have to be. But the point is, you want everybody to see this person that you resent for treating you the way you did, treating you differently. And what does that look like? And that's where your answer will be, you put the name in and then you put treating me as. I want to be treated. All right. So I'm at a wedding and he's my ex. He's at the wedding with me and everyone knows he treated me like crap. That's why we divorced. Now I want everyone at the wedding to see him treat me like I am the queen that he never should have gotten rid of, or I'm cherished and I'm deserving and I'm strong and loving. All those things that I think people saw, I now want them to see come from him. So we're really sticking it to them. And then the ambition. You know, I feel ambitious. What would I rather see? What, you know, instead of the way I was treated, how do I want to see? Well, I want to be treated like I'm the most wonderful, important, and respected person in their life. That's how I think that's how every spouse should treat their spouse. You are the most important thing in my life. And then we go over to the fear. Well, what's my fear? Well, probably that I'll never be treated the way I'm supposed to be treated. It's pretty, the fear can be pretty simple. This isn't brain surgery, and it doesn't take, like, I got to have a session with my therapist to figure out these answers. It's really not. These should come popping right out of your mouth, thinking about them, because you've been living with them. You've got the resentments. You know why it's there. You might be in denial, or you might have covered it up, but you basically have an idea who you've been operating with. They should come to you. If you have a complete blank, skip it and send me an email, and we'll go over it together, and we'll try to hash it out and figure out what's stalling you. And then there's the security question. What would it take for me to be okay with this situation? Well, I'd need him to stop being a liar, speak the truth, and respect me. Okay, seems reasonable. But here's the kicker. Why do I need this in order to be okay? Well, I need it so that I feel safe and protected in my relationship with him. So that you guys have all the answers. You might have to pull them out a little bit, and that's okay. But as you start doing this, you'll start making this list. By the time you get to maybe your 6th, 7th, 8th sheet, you're going to know what the bottom answer is without having to go through all the sheets. Because that's the way these sheets work. And at some point you won't even need a sheet. You'll be in the middle of having a resentment start to show up, and you'll already know what it's about. It's a tremendous way to get to know yourself. So when you guys finish the 3rd sheet, we will, of course, go on to the 4th sheet. The 4th sheet is not a copy of the 2nd sheet is not a copy of the 1st sheet. It is different questions, and it is digging into deeper things. And at the end of the 4th column, we're going to understand our resentment 100% when we read our real role. I don't remember if I went over this sheet with you guys or not. I can if you want. It's up to you guys. Do you want to go over this? Did I go over this with you guys?
No. Can you go over it?
Yeah, let's go over it then. All right. So we're still working on the Drew person. We'll keep that. This is still in purple, so it's still Drew. So when I resented, so it's going to be from column 1, which was, remember, when I resented Drew, 4 over here, number 2. So number 2 on the 3rd column is lying and manipulating me to their ego needs. Okay, there's our answer right there, number 1 and number 2. And it tells you right there, this is where you get the answer, right up here on the top. So it says, my perceived role, like you are standing in front of a judge in a courtroom, defending yourself as a betrayed spouse, abused child, misunderstood person, abandoned person, rejected friend, ignored citizen, etc. The event is true or false. Did it really happen? So that's a yes or no. I'm going to put yes. And then it says, I am the So I am the, where did I write it? I am the back here. It should be back here. Nope, I didn't put it in. All right, so I am the lied to how do I want to say this? I am the lied to, I can't think of any more ways to say I was lied to. I was the lied to offended spouse, I'll say. So then we go to number 1, self-seeking behavior, things I do. So do means action, all right? So things that I actively do when I feel this resentment towards this horrible lying. So I wrote, I shut down emotionally, I plan my escape, I grill and I question him, and I manipulate the outcome. So those are my self-seeking behaviors, and they're all actions. They're the way I behave. So the second one is self-centered thinking, which means I'm being selfish. I'm thinking about myself. So it's your thoughts, attitudes, motives when you're feeling this resentment, and it's thoughts. So my thoughts would be, I deserve better than him. He lies because he is afraid of me. He isn't on my level of honesty. Why can't he treat me like I treat him? So those are my self-centered thoughts. I'm thinking about myself, and I feel like I must be better than him because I don't treat him like he treating me. So I deserve better than him. That's my self-centeredness. So then I go down to number 3, and this is the dishonest one. So it's dishonest and or delusional. How am I misrepresenting myself or my reality by lying, omitting, or deluding when I feel this resentment? So again, I'm going to think about how angry I get when I think about him lying to me. And how do I show up as dishonest when I'm doing this? So I freeze and I don't confront him. That's dishonest. I didn't tell him it was a problem, so I'm being dishonest. I tell myself I'm wrong. That's delusional. I know I'm not wrong. He's lying. I remind myself he is not capable of telling the truth. Well, that's delusional. Everybody's capable of telling the truth. I say, well, he has an addiction, so it's okay. That's another dishonesty. It is not okay to be lying when you have an addiction. It's still a problem. And the last one is, it's okay because it's part of the disease. Well, it is part of the disease, but if he's not getting help for that, it's a problem. So that all of that's delusional thinking. So then I go down to fear. I'm afraid of not getting what I want or losing what I have. What fear comes up when I think about this resentment? So my fear is, I'm afraid nothing is true. He is not capable of being honest. I will never get out from under the abuse. If I confront, he may walk away. I am afraid I am not in control. So those are the fears that come up when I think about how big of a liar he is. And in that process, I start thinking, well, maybe he's not capable of being honest, and I'll never get out from under the abuse. So then I'd start working up this whole fear reaction just by thinking about the resentment. And then we go to responsible. Where am I accountable or responsible for my feelings and reactions when I feel this resentment? Now, this one really throws people because they say, well, why am I responsible for what they're doing? Well, we're not responsible for what they're doing. We're responsible for how we respond to it. So it says here, when the event happened, so that means when the initial event happened, which if it happened under the age of 18, you have no responsibility. If it happened over 18, then that changes. But if you were a child and you were sexually or physically abused, that's not ever going to be anything that you contributed to that happening. So when the event happened originally, I doubted myself and I didn't confront the lies. I didn't have the courage to confront him. So that's my contribution to his lying. And then currently, now I look the other way. I choose which lies to address and I let others go. So that's my problem now. I look the other way. I'm looking the other way. He's lying and I'm just, okay, I'm just going to pretend it's not happening. So that's my responsibility to what's going on in the relationship between the two of us. Number 6, what harm did I cause this person? What is the actual negative impact of my resentful actions on this person? You pick which ones apply. So I picked emotional, financial, and mental. The emotional, you don't have to explain it on the sheet. You just tick the box. But for your own information, you could say, all right, emotionally, I harmed the person because I wasn't honest about my feelings. So, that's an injustice. Financial, meaning money or time. I wasted a lot of time listening to a lot of lies because I would not listen to my own higher power. And then mental, mentally, how I harmed this person was I manipulated and controlled by not speaking the truth. I manipulated things to work out the way I needed instead of addressing the real problems. So that's the harm I did towards the person. So the next question is, what harm, if any, have I caused others? Which means other than the person I'm resentful towards. And I wrote how I involved him with a negative impact. All right, so it says, he lied to my family and I pretended he was being truthful. That's how I hurt other people. I talked about him to other people, which some of the people shouldn't have heard the things I said, so that affects them. And it affected their relationship with him. So then the people I talked about him to now have a strained relationship because of my part of my talking about him when I shouldn't have to other people. And then my character defects around just this resentment are codependency, I'm in denial, fearful, faithless, and have false trust. So when we list our character defects, we don't list all of our character defects, just the character defects that have something to do with the resentment. Because we want to see what's behind what we're doing. Then number 9, why do I hold on to this resentment? What are the benefits, value that I get from keeping this resentment going? So I hold on to remind me that he is a liar and that I have to be on guard to his lies and how they affect me and call him out now because I let it go before. I have hypervigilant awareness. So my distorted thinking is I need a resentment, an active resentment as a reminder that he's a liar, which is not true. I can just look at him and see he's a liar at this point. So the holding on to the resentment is I'm probably lying about the reasoning too. And here's the big kahuna right now is my real role. So in holding on to this resentment and the negative feelings, and it can be the opposite of your perceived role, which is up at the top. So it turns out my real role is I am manipulating him and undervaluing and underloving myself through my lying about the real events that I want to deny. So this could be considered what some people would call a turnaround. This completely turns everything around from the third column, which was his lying and manipulating me to his own ego needs, which when I go to the fourth column and at the last line here, it's my real role. Well, I'm manipulating him and I'm lying about real events because I want them to be the way I want. So we were both doing the same thing. The beauty of this is when I realize that I'm not resentful towards him, I'm resentful towards myself, I can now let go of the resentment because it's not about him, it's about me. And that's, we get to the amends in step 5 and 6, we'll do other stuff, but we just want to get this far to the perceived role, because the perceived role is where we get set free from the resentments and the false self and all this crap that goes with it, the selfishness, the dishonesty. I mean, when you think about all of this stuff that I wrote about this person, and then at the end it turns out it's really about myself. That's like phenomenal. It's phenomenal that Bill was able to do this way back when he did. In fact, if you really want to understand how this works, there's an author out. Her name is Byron Katie. It's called 4 Questions. And she does a very similar system with just 4 questions. She turns it around just like this just did and shows us that we're the person that is the problem, not the person on the third sheet. So as I said, once you do a couple of these, like you get 4, 5, 6, maybe even done, you're gonna see the patterns. You're gonna see your own patterns. Your fears are gonna come up, and they're gonna probably be the same on all the sheets. And we think it's an inventory about our resentments, but it's really about ourselves and what gets us into the resentment and how we don't know how to get out because it's not the other person. So having seen this, is it understandable? Is it overwhelming? Any input? What do you think, Mark?
I got a question.
Go ahead, Susan.
You could go back again to
Yep.
the previous.
Yep.
So I'm a little confused of the last square, my real role and then perceived role. What's the difference between them?
So my perceived role was that I was the victim of lying and manipulation. I'm paraphrasing, but lying and manipulation from another person. But when I get to the real role and I realize I'm manipulating and lying about events to him or about him. So we go into a perceived role of that we're being treated a certain way by people, when it's in actuality, in reality, it's ourselves that are treating us the way that we are being treated.
That I get, but I don't understand that bottom left box. It says my real role, ... and then perceived role, ... Where's the perceived role there?
So your perceived
it's
role
different.
It's at the top of column 4. See it up here? My perceived role.
Oh, okay. So you're to compare it to at the top, what you already wrote.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and my biggest suggestion to people is don't skip around on these boxes. Do it in the order that it is on the sheet. Because what people do once they figure out the formula is they just go ahead and they fill it out. But what's happening is all these other boxes that we're figuring out are part of your amends. They're part of 5, 6, and 7. These are all still going to be in play as we get further down in the steps. When this doesn't end with step 4. So you're going to pull information out of these columns to do with the higher numbered steps. So don't skip over any and think they're not important, or, oh, I've got it. I know what it is. I'm going to go right to my real role and be done with this. Don't do that to yourselves. You need to have all the information. It's a complete set. It's got to be completed as you see it. It's tempting to say, okay, I know how this works now. I'm just going to jump ahead. Please do not jump ahead. Continue to fill it out. I know you're all really smart people, but the information is about other things too. So even though it might seem like I don't really have to do this, you really have to do it. Really put the information in there. Because also, if you get stuck, we can look back and see why you're stuck or where you got stuck and how it's not working and why it's not working. So be very thorough and very succinct and go in order. Please don't jump ahead for your own sakes.
I think because you asked me, I'm actually not surprised at the reveal at the end. I was actually thinking about something similar to that, but I can see how it's more effective than just letting us write a story about why I deeply hate this person and give you 5 or 10 examples. And then I think the only thing that I would add that it probably goes by more quickly when you do the step 5.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Exactly. Yeah.
because I'm not telling you all these extended anecdotal reasons why they should be run over by a car.
Exactly. It makes everything easier. Absolutely, Mark. Good point. And what it really makes easier is when you get through these sheets and you get done with your shark bite people, you're just going to feel such a heavy load lifted from you, and you're not even going to maybe understand, but you can't do the depth of this work and not come out of it feeling like you're a different person. It's that impactful that it will absolutely change the way your addiction affects you. Absolutely. So do it with as much honesty and willingness as you can. You don't have to read them to anybody. You don't have to share them. If that hinders you putting as much information as you need in there, don't feel like you have to read it. You don't have to. Absolutely. I mean, if there's people that are willing to read them so that everyone can hear different examples of the same sheet, it makes it really easier on the rest of the people trying to figure out how to fill these out. And this is not something, that's going to happen in a minute. This takes time. These sheets take, if you do both sheets, it's going to take you about an hour and a half to do one. It's not quick. It's not a quick study. It looks like it is the way I read it off and it's all, but it's not quick work. And it shouldn't be, because we want it to stick. We really want this healing to happen. And this is how it happens. Because we're all carrying pages and pages of shit around that we don't need to. And like Bill W. says, the heavier that load gets, the stronger your addiction gets. So we want to make this load of this bring us down as light as possible, because there's always going to be something. We're all human and we're all dealing with humans. It's not like we're trying to get to perfection here. We're just trying to get to a significantly lighter load so that we're not tempted to pick up our addiction or to play our addiction or to gamble our addiction or to spend our addiction or whatever you're dealing with, whatever your addiction is. This is going to eliminate the reasons why you pick up. It was originally why you picked up. The reasons are all here. This tells the story about you, about who you are and how you've lived your life and why you have an addiction to whatever you have an addiction to. So when you can look at your story, honestly look at it and see at the bottom, my God, I hated this son of a whatever for 20 years. And now I'm saying I'm the one that's in pain, not the person I'm feeling this towards. I mean, some people do it, and the people have been dead for 30 years, and they're still carrying that pain around. Who wouldn't drink? I mean, like, think about it. Imagine being married to the worst spouse in the entire world. You finally get free, you break away, 30 years go by, and you're still carrying that crap around on your back. That's what we're doing. Who the heck wouldn't pick up? You would have to cope with all the crap that you bring into your life. So it's showing us a lot. It's showing us our defects. It's showing us the role we have in these conflicts. It's showing us, you know, when you look at the 1 through 4 on the second page, the fourth column, what does that say about yourself? The self-seeking, the selfish, the dishonest, all of that. You know, I mean, we have to focus on ourselves. It doesn't matter what others did. It's our reaction to what they did. It'll probably never match up to what they think they did. Doesn't even matter. What matters is this is a lot to be dragging through life for any of us. And, you know, I'm going to say most of you are going to have at least 10 to 20 people that you're going to have on your list if you haven't done this before. And there's people, it's not uncommon for me to talk with somebody or sit with somebody and they'll tell me I have 100 resentments. 100 people. I don't even know 100 people off the top of my head. So, you know, when you talk about not wanting to have a relapse or not wanting to have your disease running your life, this is where it happens. This is where the action comes in. This is the only thing we can do. We can only heal ourselves. The son of a bitches will still be out there, but we don't care because they're off our back and they're not our problem anymore. That's the goal. So does everyone feel like they have an idea, at least on how to start this? I want you to do the third column. If you feel like you're doing the third column and it's making sense and you're really comfortable with it, you can go ahead and try to do the fourth column also. I'll leave that up to you guys to make that choice about what you feel like you're comfortable or not comfortable with. I will send them all out, and I don't think I've sent this one with the answers in it. Just because sometimes when you're reading the questions, your mind starts wandering and you start thinking different questions. And I think when you see it this way, where it's put into the perspective of this is an actual, it's not an actual, but it's a compilation of something, it keeps you on track better. Hi, Carol.
Hi, I just wanted to tell you that I redid my sheets. I did column 3 and column 4, and I redid my sheets after looking at your example. And I'm so glad I did that because I had a much better perspective of what my real role is as opposed to my perceived role.
That's
So,
fantastic.
so
You know,
thank
the reason I did this was because when I was working with Herb, I was like, what is this? What are we looking at? There's so much here, and I needed better direction. I needed a visual, so I did it this way because I figured there's got to be somebody else out there that
it really
I
helped.
do. Yeah, so I'm really glad to hear that because I really want people to understand this and be successful with it. Because, like I said, this is the key. This is the key to the kingdom.
I know.
This is the beginning of the ascent. You know, this is really, it's tough work, but it's so important, and it's going to make.
Now, once you get it, and I think I've got it. I'm not going to say I did get it but I'm pretty sure I got it. But once I got it, I just wanted to tell everybody. I'm just bursting at the seams to read my pages and tell everybody because I just feel such a rush of freedom.
That's exactly how you should feel, especially when you've done it the right way. If you're doing the sheets and it's just not having an effect on you, something's not right, because it really has a profound effect.
Right.
Definitely. Go ahead, Annette.
Excuse me. I just love these sheets, Lisa, and all the work that you've put into this, and I'm just so grateful. Um, Two things. One, I should probably know this, but the character defects, is there a list somewhere? Should we just pull that out of one of the steps?
I'll send one out with the email, the character defects.
Okay, and great. And I wanted to know, I just feel like the amount of work and papers and all that you're doing, I would like to give a gratuity for this program, and I don't see that anywhere.
I appreciate that, Annette. You can go on to my website. It's on the first page. There's a donation thing there.
Awesome.
To do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You, Lisa.
Thank you. All right. Any more questions? Everybody's good? That's fantastic. All right, then I will do the Serenity prayer if anyone wants to join. God, please grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Good
Thank
night.
you, Lisa.
Any questions?